Friendly Tyburn is a 2-year project looking at the physical environment and how it could be a factor of social isolation. We worked with the residents and community in the Tyburn area to audit the area and see what changes we could make to make it more accessible for everybody. We were funded by the big National Lottery Community Fund and worked with BVSC on this project and lots of other project partners. Vehicle volumes have a big impact on safety and perceived safety, and so one of our recommendations would be to implement measures that reduce the volume of traffic. This can be anything from school streets or filter permeability, such as this. It reduces the through traffic through a neighbourhood, but the key thing to remember is to not forget the boundary roads, the roads on the outside that do take the volumes of traffic. A recurring problem throughout the project area was that pedestrians had to wait a long time once they pressed the button to cross the road. And then when they did get the green person, the time was too short. This one, however, is really well timed. Another difficulty is that a lot of the crossings have either big dog legs or, in this case, that's what this one has, a big space that you have to walk through and then do that all over again. But some of them are actually very narrow and don't allow enough space for someone in a mobility scooter or a wheelchair or pushing a pushchair to navigate quite so easily. So we would recommend addressing the crossing timings and making sure that the green person timing is long enough and that the wait time for the pedestrian to cross is shorter, and also to address the space within the crossing to make it as direct and as easy for pedestrians as possible. Pavement parking is a big issue for a lot of pedestrians. Sometimes it can mean the difference between finishing a journey if you're using a mobility scooter, a wheelchair or pushing a pushchair. Our recommendation would be to ban pavement parking everywhere. We had a mini trial here with a local school looking at installing street kit to stop pavement parking in certain locations to allow the school children to cross the road safely, access the pavements and just be safer in their environment as pedestrians. The speed of the traffic was something a lot of residents told us that made them feel unsafe as pedestrians when they were out and about. So one of our recommendations was to look at reducing the speed limit to 20 miles an hour in residential areas and 30 miles an hour on arterial routes such as this, and to add more crossing points so pedestrians felt safe to be able to cross these busy roads. There are very few community spaces and places in the project area that we're working in. The sanctuary is one of them, and in the area where the sanctuary is, there's a lot more social capital, a lot more people working together, a lot more community, people supporting each other and people willing to participate in the projects around them. Our recommendation would be to implement, maintain, support lots of community spaces. We also worked in a green space where we tried to install a community garden and some seating to try and create a space just for the residents to get together and get to know each other really and start creating that sense of community. Public seating allows people to be a lot more independent. They can make that longer journey. They can walk from their house to the shop, do all their shopping and walk home. It means that they can do these journeys actively on foot or potentially even on bike. And so one of our recommendations would be to install public seating in places where there are a lot of people and where there are facilities. There are very few public toilets here in Tyburn, and as is the case across the UK. And one of the things that a lot of residents told us is that they need public toilets in order to make their journeys more independent. So one of our recommendations is to explore a community toilet scheme. This can be done in a lot of different ways, so it might be local authority led, where the local authority funds businesses to keep their toilets open to non-customers, or it could be a community-based setup where businesses work together to keep their toilets open, again for non-customers. Often groups work with PCSOs and the local police to make sure that there's no unwanted antisocial behaviour. Wayfinding signage is often aimed at cars and motorised traffic. In order for people to get around, they need some wayfinding signage directed at them. So our recommendation would be to look at signage that works for pedestrians and cyclists and gives an indication of how long it would take for somebody to walk so that they feel confident that they can do that journey. We worked here in Castle Vale looking at and installed a lot of these around the neighbourhood with the help of the community so that they were able to tell us how long it would take them to walk from place to place. Although public transport wasn't a big part of our project, it was something that a lot of residents were really concerned about. They wanted to make sure that the journeys that they were making on public transport were well connected, well serviced, and that they weren't taking multiple journeys to do a short distance. So our recommendation would be to look at connectivity and service in relation to public transport and make sure that it suits the needs of the residents, especially where there are older residents. There's very little cycling infrastructure in the areas that we were working in, and where it does exist, it's not very good. We would recommend good quality cycling infrastructure, and good quality means that it's coherent, so you know where you're going, you know which route you're taking, and there's some legibility around it. Direct, so it's as quick on your bike as it would be in a car, if not quicker. Safe, you should feel comfortable and safe, segregated from the traffic where possible or on quieter roads. Comfortable so that you're riding on a nice smooth surface, and attractive. It should be in a part of the town or a part of the neighbourhood that you want to be in, and it shouldn't have big street furniture right in the middle of it. The physical environment around us is only as good as the maintenance that keeps it up. So things like leaf fall can cover huge swathes of pavement, and you won't be able to see where the curb ends and the road begins, and that's not very pleasant for anyone to walk on, especially if you're struggling with mobility or have different mobility needs. Equally, puddles of water, uneven surfaces, potholes, gaps in the pavement, all these things make getting around quite difficult. One of the key recommendations that we have made is to review maintenance schedules and look at the areas that people are moving through and make sure that those areas are getting sorted and looked after first. One of the activities we did in the project was to look at this particular stretch of road, and we cleared all this vegetation about half of the width of the pavement, so we doubled the width of the pavement. And we were working with project partners, so we were working with the Sanctuary, Encompass Support and Kia, and we also worked with the estates team here on the estate, and they've since taken on the task of keeping some of this vegetation clear so that the path remains accessible to everyone that wants to use it.